Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Ladies and gentlemen, have I got a podcast for you. On this episode of the Animal Mind Podcast, AMP number 5, we have Jose Garcia, that fat man to Batman on Instagram. Now, I've been following this guy for a number of months, just watching him day after day, trying to drop weight on a Batman-inspired weight loss journey. And there's just something about him. I just kept seeing these posts and him being just ultra vulnerable on the on social media. And I thought, I've got to give this guy a chance because I think he's got something to say, and I think he's the exact kind of person that we want to have on this show. You know, it's not always about having record breakers and these just amazing people, inspiring and motivating people on the show. Sometimes it's about having everyday Joes who are just out there getting at it and trying to improve themselves. And this guy is just, he's going to blow you away. So I don't want to give you too much. You got to listen to the whole podcast. But before we get on with the show, I need to remind you to go and follow us on all of our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and so on and so forth. Also, head to animalmindpodcast.com. Click the shop button. We've got t-shirts, hats, we've got mugs, and also we have a new feature on the website, a book club. And all that really means is we're just taking a list of all the different books that get mentioned on all the various episodes of the podcast, and we've created Amazon affiliate links so that you can help us fuel the podcast by buying some of the books that we mention on the podcast. That's right, you were going to buy them anyway, and if you click through the link, it helps fuel the animal mind fire. First of all, thanks for being on the show, Jose.
No, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
I've been watching you on Instagram for a couple months, and you've just been getting at it every single day, and I've just been impressed. How long have you been on this Batman-inspired weight loss journey?
I'd say probably realistically, I started about a year and a half ago. Really sticking to it, it was, I'd probably say about 9 months ago, because a year and a half, and again, that's one of the things that I've learned, right? Like when you start, like people are always scared to fail. And so I was like, I can't fail. I can't miss a single day. And then life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans.
That's right, John Lennon.
Yeah. And, things happen and you take a rest day and then one turns into four and four turns into a week. And you're like, I haven't been to the gym. And you go back and you get that really hard, DOMS that sets in. And you're like, oh, I forgot what this was like. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going to take a couple more days to rest. And so I've been about a year and a half, and it's been a huge learning process because I'm not an athlete. I was never an athlete growing up. I did like marching band, but didn't really play any sports. So really going and making sure I'm doing something every day has been about 9 months or the last year, I would say, somewhere around there. The time's starting to kind of just mix all together.
Awesome. And so what I want you to do, Jose, take me to that moment when you decided to embark on this mission, if you would.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was listening to some of your other episodes, and I forgot who it was that you had asked, but you asked about like a defining moment in life where it's like, what was that moment where you changed? Where you changed something changed in you. And there's this, she won't be surprised, there's a woman involved.
It's always a woman.
Yeah, exactly. And we had have a good friendship and had a good relationship, and things just had never really worked out between us. We still have a good relationship, and we were at a party, and she had a few to drink, and she looked at me and she had brought a date, and she's like, "Oh, what do you think about him?" And I was like, "I don't know. He looks like your typical type, like tall white guy, ex-vet. Like he looks like a guy that you would be into, like all the other guys you've dated." She's like, "Oh, well, I have dated different guys." He's like, yeah. Well, I've never seen them. They've all looked the same. And
all white people look the same.
Well,
Get that, Pod World.
Guys, you've got a whole bunch of crackers and a Raptor, man. They're all cracked.
So she says, like, she's sitting there and we're talking, and she's like, well, you know why we never worked out? And I was like, oh, like, I don't know. And in my mind, the first thing that came to my mind, I remember, like, vividly, I was like, oh, because I'm a fat piece of shit.
Oh.
And,
Damn.
I didn't say that, but that was my internal thought. I was like, yeah, I get it, and I know why. And I remember her listing off a few things. She's like, I thought about it a lot. It's not a weight thing. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, she just kind of put it out there. She's like, I don't like the way, what did she say? I don't like your sense of humor. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, you have too many self-deprecating jokes.
Oh.
How can I like somebody who doesn't like themselves? And I was like, oh, shit. Like, internally, I was like, damn, dude. And, like, I don't think it had ever really crossed my mind. And that moment when it was like, shit, like, maybe I don't like myself. And I started to just kind of, I sat and I think a lot. And I realized at that point was that there was this person, and if I wanted the attributes that she had in a partner, I was going to have to be able to bring those things to the table as well. It wasn't fair for me to ask somebody to bring all these things to the table if I wasn't willing to do the same. And she's, again, very active, like, very, like, tough lady, does, like, jujitsu, like, Muay Thai, like, just real badass.
Okay.
And I thought about it, I was like, well, it's not fair for me to expect that from her and me not to bring that to the table. Like, that's not fair. Like, it's unrealistic. So that was kind of the spark where I was like, well, I need to make sure that I'm also never asking for other people what I can't do. And I just never wanted to be a victim. I never wanted to, just want to be ready for any situation I'm in. And it kind of stemmed from there.
Sure. And I think it's interesting that you went right ahead and brought up the self-deprecation, because that was my first thought when you were describing your first thought. You said, because I'm a fat piece of shit, right?
Right.
So if that's in the forefront of your brain, then that's your self-image that you're putting out there.
Totally. It's been pretty interesting. Like, even just, people talk about, especially lifelong athletes, they're like, oh, I love going to the gym. Like, I feel so good, like the dopamine. And I've never, still to this day, I don't go to the gym, and when I'm done, I'm like, oh man, I feel so great. Like, I have this, like, surge of, like, endorphins. But as the time has gone on, it's been more of like a blanket betterment. Like, I just constantly, like, I'm overall feeling better. I just feel good all the time. And if I don't work out, like, I'm like, man, it kind of sucked. Like, if I don't go to the gym, if I don't go rock climbing or bouldering or doing something, it's just like, man, something's wrong. Like, something's missing. So that's kind of the reason, like, I want to do something every day. Because now it's like I didn't know how bad I felt before. Like, I didn't know, like, how crappy I felt before.
You didn't have a baseline.
Totally. Well, I did, and it was very low. But it was like, now if I'm even sitting at work, I'm like, man, I'm super stiff. And, like, I never felt stiff before. Well, it turns out I did. I just didn't know it.
Right. So better body awareness.
Totally. Absolutely.
So have you always been a big guy?
Totally. My whole life. I think so. Right now I'm hovering right around 300. And I think my heaviest was like 415. So I was a huge dude. But in a weird way, like, I feel better now than I have ever as an adult. And I'm still, like, again, plugging away at losing weight and, like, working, but I always have. So that thought of, like, being at a lower weight has always been kind of an odd concept for me to grasp.
So Zach's in charge of bringing people on the show, as you've probably figured out. And so he has a list of people that he wants on the show. And then occasionally I'll send him a screen name or somebody. I'd be like, try to get this guy, try to get this person. So I send him you, and he says, okay, that looks good. What about this guy did you want to talk about on the show? And so when Zach and I started this show, or started ideas about what we wanted to podcast about, came up with the name Animal Mind Podcast. Of course, we wanted people who were out there doing amazing, inspiring things. So do we want people on the show who are, super fit and have their own gym and can come and talk to us about fitness and training? Yeah, absolutely. But for somebody like yourself who has the weight, you've got an even bigger hurdle to go over than somebody who's already fit, loves the gym. I'm like, we got to get this guy on the show to tell us what it's like, because I don't want to hear a fit guy tell me what it's like to try to be fit every day. I want you to come on and talk about your journey.
Yeah, and I make this joke a lot. I tell this joke where, if you have a 400-pound guy who loses 100 pounds, you're like, oh, cool, keep going. Because you're like, you're still a fat guy. But if you're like, if you're a relatively thin dude and you lose 100, 50 pounds, even like 40, you're like, oh man, I lost 40 pounds. People are like, way to go. So it's really interesting, like seeing if I run into people that I knew in high school, they're like, oh man, like you've lost a lot of weight. And if I meet someone now, they're like, whew, you got to lose some weight. So it's always kind of funny. But it's exactly what you mentioned, where when, all these things happen and I started realizing like, cool, I need to make sure that like I'm getting older. Like I need to make sure that I start taking care of myself, because I've just kind of ravaged my body for the last 30 years. As I looked around, like I didn't see anybody like me. Like I didn't see, when you go, especially with social media, everyone's posting the best thing that they've done, like only like good, clean reps. Everyone's like got really like good, like cut pictures. I'm like, that's not me at all. Like I can't relate to any of these people. And even if they're like, oh, sometimes I'll have before and after pictures, and you're like, cool, but obviously like you're thin or like fit and you're like doing well now. It's hard. Like it's not easy. It's been a whole shift in mindset, and I just didn't see anybody like me. And my thought again, and I think a lot of people say this and it's really cheesy, but if at some point I can help at least one person to be like, oh, this fucking guy did it, like I'll do it, right? Even if it's one. So, and obviously thank you guys. I don't think I thank you to start with, but between you and Zach, you guys have essentially helped push my message forward. And, it's reciprocated because I get to push your podcast forward. But really, it's like that's just one more small sliver of audience that I can reach as well, to be like, hey, maybe there's some dude who's just like, I'm too fat, I can't do that. Well, not true, because I'm like fat and lazy, and I'm making sure that I can do this. And again, it's just been like a shift of mindset, because like you can do anything. Like anything's possible. Like it's just what's the easiest way to do something? Do it. Like that's it. Like what's the easiest way to like
That's why your story is so much more interesting. I mean, we can bring a fit guy on here who's always been fit, but his mindset is already there. So now we're talking to somebody who's got, more speed bumps to overcome.
Yeah,
and and the fact is you haven't been just doing it for a month. You've been on for, like you said, over a year.
Yeah, that's a grind. That is a grind.
Yeah. And it's, the first time when I got to the gym and they were closing early, I was like, oh, what do you mean you're closing early? Like I have to work out. So it's been, that's when I realized like, oh, this is a thing. It's not just like I needed to hold myself accountable. And once someone reached out once, like, hey, like really like what you're doing, really appreciate it. Like you inspire me. And like, as soon as people said, like when people say inspire, I'm like, that makes me really uncomfortable, because I know that I'm just a regular person. Like I'm average, and I always make this joke too. I'm average across the board, like average work ethic, average, what else? Average intelligence, above average looks, but across the board, like across the board, like I'm just a normal person. Like, so I know that anything that I can do, anyone can do, because there's nothing special about me. I think, Pat, you'd mentioned talent is overrated. Was that you?
Yes.
The book, yeah. I've read it as well, and I firmly believe it. Like if you're putting in the time, it's gonna, the easiest way I can explain is I studied music in school, and I remember hearing the story of a guy that played piano, and someone came up to him and said, "Oh, I really wish I could play piano like you." And he just looked at them and said, "No, you don't. If you did, you would have done it." And he walks away, which, is kind of a rude thing to do, but that's true. No one likes, if someone's like, "Oh, I wish I could I wish I could do pull-ups." It's like, well, no, you like the idea of doing pull-ups. If you wanted to do pull-ups, you do the work. That it's as simple as that. And so it's been.
I love how you say pull-ups. Say it again. Pull-ups. Pull-ups.
Pull-ups. Yeah, it's my Southwestern accent. But yeah, it's, whatever that happens to be, it's like, oh, I wish I could lose weight. It's like, well, you like the idea of losing weight, or you like the idea of being thinner, but like, if you really want to do it, you'll do it. And it's not just with talent, it's with anything. It's like, oh, I wish I could deadlift, 300 pounds. Well, you can, you just have to put in the work. You're not going to do it tomorrow. It might be 6 months, but if if you like the idea of it, you'll just say it. If you want to do it, you're going to do it, because the easiest way to do something is to do it.
I've always wanted to be an international sex symbol, and now I'm going to do it.
You've inspired Zach.
No, I'm just messing around, dude. Hey, real talk. Like everything you're saying right now, I'm eating it up. I mean, I know you can see me on camera and whatnot, but I'm eating it up, dude. This is just like this is amazing.
This is why we wanted to do this podcast. These were the conversations that we wanted to have.
Because you started talking about like self-deprecating talk, and I'm like, dude, we got to hammer that, because not enough people know that negative mental talk, and even when you verbalize it, like, dude, that is a killer. You can't do that, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm guilty as hell.
There was this book that another woman, different one, also in love with her. She recommended this book to me, and it's a little like the women are strong in my life. It's kind of like woo-woo, like new agey, like self-help stuff, but there was a lot of good stuff in it. And one of the things that it was called the Untethered Soul, and I honestly haven't even finished it. I just got to a portion of it, and it was just like too heavy, so I had to put it down and like kind of really digest everything in it. But one of the sentences in there from the author said something like, "Would you talk to a child the way you talk to yourself?" Or like, would you talk to a loved? Yeah, I know exactly. I was like, "Oh, would you talk to a loved one like you would talk to yourself?" And when I read that, I was like, "All right, I'm putting this down. Like, I can't deal with this," because my first thought was like, I would never go up to a kid and be like, "Oh, you fat piece of shit!" Like, I never do that, right? And I would
post that on your refrigerator. Everyone who's listening, go home when you get out of your car. Post that on your refrigerator. Your self-talk.
Yeah,
would you tell your children that? Love it.
And it's true. And when I thought about it, I was like, man, like I would never, ever say this to anybody. Like, I want to respect everybody as much as possible, because I don't know what they're going through. Like, there's no way I would ever talk to somebody like that. So why would I talk to myself that way? And that just kind of put things into perspective. I'm like, oh man, this is definitely like not okay. And again, all these things kind of just started coming to fruition as I started lifting heavy weights. And I don't know, you guys are probably familiar, especially with like the firefighting and military. Like when you're doing PT, there's not really too much that you're worried about. You're not like jacking weight and being like, oh man, did I like close the fridge? You're not worried about these random things that are going on. You're concentrating on what you're doing. That's really helped with my own, like, it's almost like meditation, really. And I don't think people think about it that way, but
I'm
it
with
really
that.
is.
Definitely.
Yeah. And so that's really helped me be able to learn how to just kind of block things out. And like, really, when I want to sit and think or like meditate, like I've never understood the thinking chair until now, where I'm like, I'm going to sit down and just kind of like not worry about stuff and think about the things I have to work through. And so that's helped a lot with kind of, like you said, like the self-deprecation and like how all these things kind of work together. And they, you know, I can't have the self-deprecation while I'm trying to eat clean.
I totally identify with what you were just saying about, you know, using PT and training as a way to get outside of your own head. It puts you in a flow state. And Zach and I also do archery. So we get in a flow state through archery as well. And
Nice.
It's all about, like, you know, pulling back that arrow and just letting it rip, Tater Chip.
Friday I came to the realization through a friend of mine that was explaining to me my issues with that inner talk. And I was like, man, I really kind of got to do some inner child work here, because you come across this negative mindset. You have somebody in your ear being negative when you were a kid, and then you hear their voice whenever you start to feel any sort of fear or rejection. But then after a while, that starts to become your voice. So you're not hearing, you know, so-and-so who was mean to you as a kid. Now, all of a sudden, when you're feeling negative, it's you telling you you're bad.
Totally.
And that's like self-destructive on like, it's like the inception of self-destruction. Like there's like 14 layers.
Yeah.
And
you know,
so to do that mindfulness that you're talking about, to take the time and especially with the PT, like, cause for me, I just took, I had a like a rest day, cheat day from like September 9th, 2015 until last Monday. So, I was tired.
Right.
I needed a real long nap. And so I got back, we did yoga Monday. We went to the gym Thursday, and we're just kind of easing our way into it. My wife and I, and I did not realize what Pat was telling me before about just like getting outside your mind and doing it. And when we were in the gym, dude, I was wide open. Like it was just empty. And I was just, just doing reps on whatever machine I felt like being on at the moment. And I had, guys like, hey man, you're not using good form. I'm like, just don't take a picture for Instagram. And so, but it felt good. Like we got done and I didn't want to leave.
Right.
Yeah, you get outside of your own head, and I mean, like that's when I'm doing push-ups or pull-ups, I'm not thinking about bills. I'm not thinking about anything else. So I have a question for you, Jose. Have you ever read Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz?
No, actually, I haven't. I haven't even heard of it.
I greatly, greatly recommend that. I'm going to put it in the show notes. Basically, the guy who wrote it is a surgeon. He was a plastic surgeon, and he did a lot of research on people's body image and how it affects them. And basically, just to give it to you in a nutshell, he would say do like a nose job on somebody, give them their perfect nose, and then they would go home. They're completely altered. And then a month later, they'd come back and they'd say, you didn't do anything to my nose. And
interesting.
Essentially, and the reason for it is because their self-image never changed. So,
right.
So in order for us to change and have a positive body image of ourselves, the self-image thing has to change first, because you could quite possibly get to where you want to be weight-wise, but if you still see yourself as a big guy, as a fat guy, you may just end up back there again. So I definitely recommend that for anybody. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I know it sounds like a whole like Scientology kind of deal. It's not. It's actually written by a plastic surgeon, and all of his, like I said, research on people's internal self-image and internal self-talk. So definitely a good companion to this conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I'll check it out. And it's interesting, especially based on the title of the podcast, where I think a lot of times you're like, oh, I just gotta like get after it and go and go and go and like never stop. But a lot of it, at least for me so far, the success has really been being self-aware. I always tell like the teams that I'm running or the people that are working for me, the first step, because a lot of times it's the younger people, I let them know the first step to being a responsible adult is to be self-aware. You don't have to fix the issue, but just be aware it's there, and then we'll worry about fixing it. But that self-awareness to be like, oh, cool, like I'm actually starting to get in my head, or I'm starting to like, be around people that aren't, being, I hate to be positive, but like supportive, or, whatever the negative influence that is outside or internal, like just being self-aware makes a huge world of difference when you can be like, oh, you know what? Probably not good to be around this right now. And then just kind of take yourself out of it.
That brings me back to what Ayla Chase was saying in her 10 list. That was number one, the whole self-awareness concept.
Yeah.
So we're hitting on that again.
It's funny because I'm starting to see, even with just the few episodes so far, like I'm starting to see, I think you guys will start to see very quickly themes within, all the people are probably going to have similar themes where it's like, oh yeah, I try to like, be rational with this thing, or I try not to let my emotions get the best of me, and I try to like, be self-aware, and it'll be interesting to see. I like to think of it as a beach ball where, the three of us could be looking at the exact same beach ball, but I'm going to see a blue stripe, you're going to see a red stripe, and Zach's going to see a yellow stripe, but we're all looking at the same ball. So it's different perspectives of the same thing.
Right on. That's a good analogy.
And you get to like learn way more about it that way, because you have, I would never see the yellow stripe because that's not what I'm looking at. And when you describe the yellow stripe, I'm be like, oh, I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what I look at. So it's kind of cool. I'm really interested to see everyone else that kind of shares their journey and information as well.
And not only that your beach ball analogy brought me back to that one experiment with the gorilla. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where they're all throwing the basketball back and forth. Count how many times the basketball is going back and forth, and then it's like how many people saw the gorilla. So that's one of those definitely perception experiments. Totally. And so we're all looking at things from different directions, but I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of these people who are out there being successful, who are out there grinding, have a sense of drive, motivation. They tend to come back with the same responses. Now, what's difficult about that is we can tell people all day long who are not motivated, this is how you get motivated, and they can listen to it all day long, but it never sinks in because you got to want to. And I think that goes along with that whole self-image thing, the psycho-cybernetics thing. First, you got to make a decision. Everything starts with a decision. And that's why I wanted you to take me all the way back to your initial decision. Now, let me ask you, why Batman?
So, I mean, I've been reading comics since I was a kid, and to me, helping people has just been an intrinsic motivator for me. You know, I've always and there's that lot of talk between, you know, extrinsic and intrinsic motivators. If my internal motivation and passion is punching people in the face, and you offer me $50 to do it, I'll be like, yeah, sure, and I'll do it. And then you ask me to do it again and don't pay me, I'll still do it because that's my passion. If you have someone who, you know, external motivator is punching people in the face, you pay them, they'll punch someone in the face, and then when you ask them to do it again, they'll be like, yeah, but pay me $50 again. Like, it's not their passion. So for me, helping people has always been something internally that just drives me. I just want to make sure that people around me are taken care of, and, you know, that's just been my internal motivator.
Got to drop my hashtag. Hashtag punch you stay in the face.
I started using it, so I'm just so you know, I started using it. I love it.
Batman for me, that dude, I love where his head's at. He's just like, I got this problem in my city, and I'm gonna solve it by beating the shit out of everybody.
Yeah, it's great. I love
what
it.
more can you ask for?
Exactly.
That's just like
it's like goth Jesus or like dark Jesus. He's like, look, I'm gonna take care of my city, but I'm gonna do it by punching people in the neck instead of, you know, giving them fish and bread. So that was kind of it. You know, I was looking through, and I wanted to hold myself accountable, and I think part of it, I haven't thought too much about this, but part of it was like, well, there's all these people on Instagram, and I was doing it to hold myself accountable. So I was like, all right, well, how can I like hold myself accountable? And
well, you come on the Animal Mind podcast, throw your plan out there to the world, and then we bring you on in a couple more months, and we see where you're at.
Exactly. And I was, you know, sitting in my thinking chair. Back then it was just my sitting chair, but I was reading some comics, and I ordered this. It's actually kind of a big book. It's a couple hundred pages, and it's called The Batman Files, and it's kind of a journal, and there's a note at the very beginning written by Bruce Wayne, Batman, that says, hey, like, I've realized, like, in my absence, if I die, like, someone is going to need to know what to do in order to be Batman. So this is a journal of all of my, like, encounters, all of my fights, like, what to do, training, and all that stuff. So it's this giant book, it's like a journal pretty much, and it's a comic book. But one of the pages is a workout, and it's a week's worth of workouts. And I saw that, and I looked at it. Now, if any of you or I tried to do this in 1 week, our central nervous system would just go on the fritz. There's no way anyone's going to do this.
Is that a challenge?
It's a challenge for Zach. So
I need you to take a photo of it. No,
it's so easy.
So I have it here with me.
I'm trying to eat my Chinese food and feel good about myself. Damn.
Take a photo of it, send it to me.
Yeah, totally.
And we'll see if I can manage.
Yeah, and so like I'll just read like Sunday morning, right? And this is an off week, I believe, right? It's like a recovery week. Monday morning is a 30-minute jog and 30 minutes of meditation. I was like, well, I can do that. I probably can't jog for 30 minutes, you know, a year ago, but
the jog would be easy. The meditation for 30 minutes would be hard.
Totally. So I saw it and I was like, well, that's totally humanly possible. And then in the evening, clean and jerks, 3 reps of 8 at 262 pounds. At that point, I didn't know how heavy that was.
That's pretty heavy.
Right? It is pretty heavy. 5 sets of Metcon, like metabolic conditioning, which is a quarter-mile run, 21 kettlebell swings, 12 pull-ups. Okay. 30 minutes of flexibility work, and then 30 minutes of sparring. So I read all that, and I was like, well, that's just one day. And I was like, those are all possible. They're not inhuman. Mm-hmm. Probably not all at the same time, but those are all possible. And then, you know, you go on to Monday, another 30-minute jogs, 30 minutes of like martial arts, the evening, you know, rope climbs, you know, box jumps, heavy bag work, jujitsu, boxing. And as I read through this list, I was like, well, all of these things are possible. All of them. They're not fake. So I was like, well, why not just be like Batman? I was like, if these are the benchmarks, like this is what I'm going to hold myself accountable to. So I posted a picture of that page, and I was like, all right, this is it. And I don't know if I told anybody like, oh, this is what I'm going to do, but that's kind of been the roadmap. It's like, all right, well, I can do deadlifts. Like I can, you know, I can't do pull-ups, but I can work towards them because if I'm going to do it, I got to do it. So that's where the Batman came from. It's just from sitting reading a comic, and I was like, well, I've always loved Batman. He does the right thing. He's always helping people. He helps those that can. He protects people who can't, protect themselves. So all of that stuff kind of just played together where I'm all for those things. And again, I never want to be in a situation where I am helpless. I never want to be stuck in a situation where I can't do anything. If there's other people that can't, that's fine. And I'm not saying I'm there to save people or save everybody, but I just want to make sure I can at least protect mine and my own in some way.
So you know what I'm hearing here, Zach? He's aspiring to be a sheepdog. That's what he wants to be.
There it is.
Which is funny because I think my biggest regret in life is having never gone into the military. The more time, as I grow older, it feels very selfish that others have given of their time in order for me to sit on my couch and do nothing. So that's another thing that kind of keeps me going every day. I'm like, hey, man, there's people who have given their lives, given limbs, given like sanity in order to give me the privilege to do whatever I want. And it feels wasteful and selfish to not do something productive with it.
But can I tell you something? So your vulnerability, and that's what it is, because you mentioned it earlier, people take these photos of them working out and they're already fit. People need to see, and people believe with those pictures, that's just how they are. You don't see the 10,000 hours getting them up to that point for a lot of people. But you're showing the 10,000 hours that you're putting in. You're showing beginning to end. And there's a certain amount of vulnerability that a lot of people wouldn't share. But the reason that's inspiring to me is because I get on my Instagram and I go, I was going to have a rest day, but I see Jose's over there getting at it. I got to go do something. Got a kettlebell swinging that sucker around. Let me go do some, So everybody has a journey. So some people's journey is military, like Zach. Some people's journeys fire department. I never thought that was going to be me. I went to business school. I just happened to fall into the fire department. But God, the universe, whatever you want to call him, I call him God. He sets a journey for all of us. And you are doing this journey in the age of social media. And I think it's helping people. And I think this podcast will even help people. And hopefully they'll go follow you on Instagram and wherever else you are at. Join in. Yeah.
And again, I really appreciate it to both of you. And again, if I can help just one person, and again, that's the idea of I hope I can help one person and they surpass me because they're like, hey, I'm doing way better than you. But even if it's just one, again, I didn't see anybody like me. And I think that's a Kevin Smith thing. He's like, well, if you don't see the art that you want, you should create it. And I was like, well, I don't see anybody like me. I would love to see somebody turn into Batman. So I'm not on the verge of a psychotic break where I'm going to wake up one day and start fighting crime. But
come on.
Not yet.
All right. I'll hold you to it.
So, yeah, I just didn't see anybody. So if no one's doing what I wanted, I'm like, might as well do it. And again, it took me about 30 years, but no one's going to do it for me. So might as well do it myself.
So what are the characteristics of Batman that you're trying to get to? I assume that you have some benchmarks and using him as an inspiration, as a sort of a role model. And I think that's creative and I think that's good. Everybody has sort of a person or group of people that they're looking up to. And, when I started getting at it, it was Jocko. And here I am podcasting, but it was Jocko, his book, Discipline Equals Freedom. I got in that. I started doing the workouts in the back of that book. And then I started off on my own thing and I've been getting at it every day. And then of course, David Goggins became another hero of mine.
Totally.
And that's probably why I started following you, because I think you were using the hashtag Discipline Equals Freedom and possibly Can't Hurt Me. I don't remember which one I found you under, but I'm like, I'm following this dude right here. You and Smiles Taylor. Do you know him?
Yeah.
So I look at you two guys and I'm like, oh, these guys are getting it. I got to go out in the crush. I can't take a break today. So everybody's got, some kind of a role model. What are the virtues that you're looking at? Well, I guess virtues would be one question, but also the athletic abilities of Batman that you're trying to achieve.
It's funny. So I've been doing this, doing something every day. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to stick to. I do something every day. So
and you keep it mixed up too.
Yeah. So say if I can't get to the gym, I bought kettlebells and I have them at home, right? If I'm not at home because I'm running errands and it's 9:30 when I get home, all right, well, I'm going to do some yoga. I'm going to do something every day, regardless of what it is. So it might not be, again, level 9 berserker, but I'm going to do something. So I'm at least moving towards that goal. And like you said, I think that, I started listening to Jocko as well. And, David Goggins, if you haven't listened to him, you're missing out. And with all of this stuff that's been going on, the company that I work for just bought a building, and I'm very long-winded, so I apologize.
No, this is long-form conversation. Fill it up.
Fair enough. The company that I work for recently bought a building, and kind of as I'm managing the project in a way, and so we're essentially demoing the inside completely. We're knocking all the walls out. We're redoing the whole building, so just the 4 walls are staying up on the outside. So we sent an email out to everybody in the office, like, hey, want to get some frustration out? Come knock down some walls, like jackhammers, sawzall, like, come have some fun.
Demolition. I saw you doing that.
Right.
You never know who's watching.
Exactly. So I think I was on site. I got there around 8:30, and probably we left there around 8 p.m. So 8:30 a.m. to like 8 p.m. We were just there all day, knocking stuff down, picking it up, hauling it out to the trash can. And the whole time I was there, I realized I wasn't tired. Like obviously I was tired from, being up all day and running around and doing stuff, but I wasn't ever physically exhausted where I was like, oh, I need to take a break. I can't do this anymore. Like, oh, I'm out of breath. And that was a benchmark that I wanted to get to on some level where I was able to physically continue all day. And I know for a fact that wasn't possible before. So just being able to be on site on a construction site, really working all day and not feeling exhausted. And I woke up today and I wasn't sore. I wasn't tired. I was fine. Because again, every day I'm doing something. That was a really, really good benchmark to be like, oh, I kind of hit something here. Because this was not realistic before. There was no way you would have found me on my feet for, 12 hours just carrying heavy things. So it's kind of weird because it just happened yesterday and today. Like, I hit a benchmark that I had set for myself. Obviously, I'm not going to stop there because now I have to move it again. You have to, keep moving the pole. So moving the flags.
Fatigue. So making sure that you could go longer and just without being fatigued.
Yeah, and it goes back to that, and it's kind of vague, but it goes back to that, one of the flags, if you will, is like, I want to be okay in any situation. Whether it's like, hey, you want to go play soccer? It's like, no, there's no way I can play soccer. It's like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I can play for like 20 minutes. Or like, hey, let's go do a Spartan race. I'm like, all right, well, I can do 3 or 5 miles. Like, that's cool. Or like, hey, let's do a 5K this weekend. I want to be able to jump into whatever activity is put in front of me without having a wall that's going to stop me completely.
Making sure that you can do whatever you need to do in whatever situation that you're in. What about the virtues of Batman? Do you think that your training, your physical training, is bringing some of the mindset virtues of Batman as well?
It's funny, as we mentioned earlier with like the meditation part, through the physical training, I have just really found a knack for I've enjoyed the mental training aspect of it, right? The mental toughness and trying to, push to see like where the brain will tell you to stop versus where the body can stop. That's been one of my favorite things.
Past that 40%.
Exactly. One of the things that I've been doing with a group of friends is we get in the river here in Boise, Idaho, and it's freezing. He's
Wim Hofing it.
Yeah, totally.
Wait a minute, you're in Boise.
Yeah. I'm
on my way. I'm coming out. We're gonna go elk hunting, whether you like it or not.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. That's another thing. I've never been hunting, and I want to start doing it. And I want to go elk hunting here because I hear it's great.
You don't have a choice, young man. Pack your bag.
Yeah, dude, I am ready. If you are here, I am ready. You've got a place to stay. I am so ready.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Ashlyn, I'm going to Idaho.
We got a place.
Said it out loud so she knows. So that way now it's law. Right. It's going on the internet. Well, we're good. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, it's on the internet. It's on record.
Hang on 1 second. Pat and I are going to Idaho. Ma'am, I got you now. Chris can't say no.
Fantastic. It's on the internet. Has to be true.
Exactly.
Pat and I are going to Idaho. I just want to let you know.
So the mental aspect of it has been honestly one of my favorites because I've realized that I think the mental part of it has been more important for me than the physical part. one of the benchmarks that I had set for myself was like, oh, I want to be able to deadlift 315 pounds, like three plates on each side. That's what I wanted to do. And then I got there and I was like, oh, that wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And it took a while because it was weak. But once I did it, I was like, oh, that was easy. Like, that wasn't that hard after all. So it's been kind of cool to have people be like, hey, how much can you deadlift? I'm like, it depends. And they're like, well, I just did 285. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, yeah. I can do like 2 or 3 reps at like 295 usually. And they're like, oh, it's kind of a lot. I'm like, yeah. But anyway, I'm gloating for myself.
I got a couple of things about Batman.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I fit them in while we're still on the topic. One is like, what do you want to be? Like, talking about like, what do you want to do that Batman does? I've always wanted to jump out at like a parking garage and just crush an SUV. I don't know how to train for that, but I want to do it. Second thing is, I went to the gym that one day this last week and I got in the mirror and I was looking for gains. You know what I mean? And I was like, where are they? And I didn't see them, but hopefully they come.
Hey, man, you want to build some muscle, man? You know those guys, the Hodge twins? I want them on the show too.
I got to get with Pat actually and have him help me draft up a workout plan because I'm just going to the gym and flinging stuff around hoping for the best. And the third thing I was thinking about while you were talking was one of the lessons that Batman had to learn the hard way was when he got in that confrontation with Bane in one of the movies where Bane like snaps him in half and he was telling him, your own success has blinded you. You don't even realize you think you're going to win no matter what. Now you're presented with an opportunity where you're losing and you can't see it. Do you ever prepare yourself mentally to get to that point where you feel like you've got your goal, you're successful, you've nailed it? How do you deal with the chance of that complacency creeping up behind you as a giant, hulking Bane and snapping your back?
Totally. So, and I'll get back to what you mentioned, Pat. Because I have an answer for this, and I think actually I got it from Jocko, and I really wish it would have been mine because I've thought about it a lot, but I was never able to articulate it. He talks about Sisyphus, and if you aren't familiar, I'm sure you're familiar with Sisyphus.
Don't be too sure.
He's a Greek, I'm pretty sure Greek character in Greek mythology that I believe he gave the knowledge of fire to humans. So he was punished by having to push a boulder up a hill for the rest of his days. So the hill never ends, the boulder never gets smaller. So Jocko mentioned this thing of wanting to be Sisyphus. Like he wants to always struggle, always want to be pushing forward, always wanting to learn. And if he ever gets to the top of the hill, he's going to roll the boulder back down so he can start all over again because he never wants to get to a point where he's learned everything he can. And I agree. Like if there's a point where I feel like I've learned everything I can, obviously I'm wrong. There's just no way. And one of the ways that I combat that personally is that I'm constantly taking on new things. So like I started taking archery because I'm like, all right, this is something I don't know how to do. So like, how can I start learning? Because if I want to hunt an animal and I want to be able to survive, again, I want to be resourceful. At some point, I may just have a bow and arrow. So like, how can I learn to do this? Never would I have thought that I would be doing this, but like, if I'm comfortable right now, that means I need to be uncomfortable. I don't know where I heard it, but I think it's cheesy, but it's also true. There's no growth in the comfort zone. If I'm comfortable, I'm just refining what I already know, which is fine if I'm refining, but if I want to grow, I need to be uncomfortable.
Well, it's like I always tell our recruits, because I run their PT, or I have run their PT. That's kind of come to an end because I'm out of training, but we're going to talk about that on another podcast. Anyways, I've been running their PT, and one of the things that I first start them out with is explaining to you things are going to start hard, and then they're going to get harder. Because if I take you out and have you bench press 135 pounds and you do it 6 times, and then I take you the next day and you do it 6 times, the next day you do it 6 times, what do you get really good at, right? You get really good at bench pressing 135 pounds 6 times.
Exactly.
So you've got to either increase reps or weight or intensity in some way, shape, or form. So there's always a way to do that.
Totally. Yeah, and again, I've realized that you'll see these things on Facebook and social media where I'm going to say some girl, but somebody has like taken these like a really bad picture of the night sky and put like glittery words over it, and it's something like you'll never change the world if you act just like it or something like that, and you're like, whatever. But if you think about the actual words, like the philosophical meaning behind them, it makes sense. Like that's why those quotes like catch on and make sense, because they're easily digestible, but the depth behind them, if you take the time to think about it, usually have pretty good meaning.
I actually had Zach create that meme. The glitter sky. I didn't say specifically glitter sky. He came back with that. I gave him the quote. He came back with that, and I guess it is spreading though, Zach.
I am an artist.
Yeah, don't let anyone dim your light. So yeah, and I just think that there's a lot of those things that are posted, and if you just take it at face value, it's fine. But there's usually some depth that where they originated from, not necessarily the person, but wherever they came from originally, that has a lot of meaning and value.
Can you take us like through a week in your life, or a week in your training?
Yeah, sure. So I usually get up about 4:30, 4:34 if I'm really pushing it. I like to tell people I sleep in until 4:30 because I like to sleep in half an hour instead of 4 o'clock. At that point, I will wake up. So say like it's Monday, I'll wake up. This is every day actually. I'll wake up, do some Wim Hof breathing, do about 4 cycles of breathing. That'll take me right into about 20 to 30 minutes of meditation where I can just lay or sit peacefully without any issues because it's still quiet out. Everyone else is sleeping. So I'm able to just kind of prepare for the day and go through lists of things that I need to do and really plan my day, as opposed to being like, oh yeah, I need to go to the grocery store. I need to do these things. I really sit down and plan it mentally, draw the pictures in my brain of everything that needs to happen. Once that's done, it's usually about 5:30. I'll get out of my chair, I should say, prep my food that I'm going to take for the day, because I want to make sure that I'm eating food that I prepared and not just buying junk.
So what kind of diet are you on, if you don't mind?
One of my friends explained it best. If it either breathed, swam, or grew in the dirt, I should say, I'll eat it. That's what I try to limit myself to. So animals of all kinds, and vegetables and fruit, if need be.
So kind of paleo.
Yeah, more or less.
Okay, clean eating. Yeah. Okay, good. Continue.
I try, yeah, and if it crinkles, I probably shouldn't eat it. If it makes a sound while I'm trying to get to it, I probably shouldn't eat it. So, so I try to stick to that as much as possible. I like to call it eating like an asshole. If I'm eating something I shouldn't be eating, and that kind of keeps me on mind, be like, oh, don't eat like an asshole. Like if it's making sound when I'm trying to get to it, probably shouldn't eat it. I shouldn't say I eat a lot, but I do enjoy nuts as well. Take that for what you will. But pistachios, almonds, such as. Once that's over, about 5:30, I like to get in the shower. I do take a warm shower, and then the last 2 minutes to 3 minutes will just be a completely cold shower to make sure that I'm, having a little bit of cold exposure.
Yeah, it's bold.
Yeah,
I'm still working on that. Zach takes completely cold showers.
Woo! Nice.
Yeah, it's really I don't know. I'm married, and I'm probably gonna say something that my wife won't be proud of. But occasionally, her and I will take a shower together, and as some couples do. And she likes to shower from the depths of hell, to the point where I will be standing in the back of the shower. And then I like to get in, and she will be standing in the back corner of the shower asking me why are you doing this?
We take double showers too, but that's because we have a septic tank. So you really got to consider save that water, or else
conserve the water.
Yep.
However you want to brand it, it's fine.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry, Jose. Continue.
No, that's fine. So that will typically take me to work, right? Because shower, get ready, pack my things. I always pack my gym clothes, ready to go, shoes, and then go to work. And so work is just work. There's nothing that happens there. I tried to make it as active as possible, but I do work at a desk, so standing up on a balance board whenever I can.
Hey.
Whatever I can get in. I try to take my joints whenever I'm standing anywhere. I like to take my joints through their range of motion. So even if I'm sitting there working and reading something, I'll move my wrist, try to get it as much as possible, just so my brain doesn't forget that my joints need to be working.
Working on mobility.
Pretty much, yeah. They're just the whole range of motion, making sure it's there. Just so, again, because sitting there, I don't like that idea of like, oh, sitting's a new smoking. I think not moving is terrible for you, because even if you're standing and not doing anything, I still get stiff. So again, I want to just keep moving as much as possible. But work is usually, 8 to 9 hours. It's just there, like, job, because I need money. Once that's over, I'll head to the gym, and depending on the day, I'm either going to be kickboxing. I'm going to be working with kettlebells, free weights. I hate to say CrossFit because I know sometimes it gets a bad rep, but it's essentially like strength training with metabolic conditioning. Mm-hmm. Sometimes yoga, sometimes rock climbing, something. Again, that kind of changes.
Is there a program that you're on, or do you have a trainer or somebody helping you?
So with the kickboxing, I go to with an instructor, like a mixed martial arts instructor. So I've started kickboxing, I'd say probably about 2 months ago, which maybe a month and a half. I've never done any fighting sport before, and it has been the most gratifying thing and mentally exhausting thing. No one explained to me that, boxing or kickboxing or jiu-jitsu is a mental game, and I'd say like 20% physical. Being able to, see when a punch is coming, predict where the punch is coming, or being able to see the tells. That's been my favorite part, to be honest, is being able to just kind of read what's happening in the scenario. As far as the metabolic conditioning and the free weights, that is usually like a CrossFit class. And I personally, the kettlebell stuff, I will program that on my own depending on what I'm going to need that week. Between the kickboxing and like rock climbing, whatever I'm missing, I'm like, hey, you know what? I didn't really work my back too much this week, so I'm going to work this kettlebell program this week so I can kind of get through this. I also really enjoy using a steel mace. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Yeah, I've seen them, and I've seen you using them a lot.
Yeah, so essentially it's a weight on the end of a steel rod. So if it's 10, 15, 20, or 25 pounds, the cool part of it is it's offset. So if I do a squat with the weight on the left side, it's really like a barbell with weight just on one side. You have to move it over to the other side or you become imbalanced. So it helps a lot to make sure that I'm working both my weak and my strong side with whatever I end up doing. So I really dig that. So really the workout portion is just whatever is like really calling my name. And that's what I've enjoyed the most about is specifically with this Batman thing, that I'm not specializing, I'm generalizing. So, I can specialize with something, but I'm going to need to be, that's what I'm going to spend my time on. So if I'm going to just do like, say, TRX all the time, I'm going to specialize in that, and I'm going to know that through and through, and I'm going to know that better than anyone else. I don't want to do that. I want to generalize so I can know some of everything. Everyone knows about the 10,000 hour rule, but it really only takes 20 hours to be good at something. So if you spend 20 intentional hours working on something, you will learn how to do it. And then, you go from there to 30, 40, and 50. But I want to generalize, not specialize, because I want to be as well-rounded as possible. Not just physically as I am now, but, as like a human being, I want to be as well-rounded as possible. So once the gym is over, to answer your question, I'll usually come home and have dinner if it's not too late. If it is too late, too bad. Just cut it off. I don't want to eat too late because I don't feel good in the morning. I feel like I have a food hangover. And then I'll spend the time at home reading, whether it's like a book on philosophy or, a book on boxing technique or like martial arts technique, whatever, something. Read for about an hour. And then I will practice a language or practice coding or programming, something that I want to learn so I can keep pushing myself forward. And that usually takes me right about, and maybe play some music if I have some extra time, like a little bit of piano or ukulele or guitar. And then that takes me right about to 10 p.m. And then it's time to go to bed so I can get up tomorrow and do it all over again.
When you say playing music, do you mean listening to music or actually playing it?
No, playing it for like the mental stimulation, so I kind of keep myself young and spry.
Oh, that's right, because you said you were a musician from band and stuff. Okay, right on.
So that's the day. I would say it's a pretty typical American day. You go to work 8-9 hours, and then you kind of have some free time. I just try to cram my free time with as much work as possible. So by the time I get to my bed, I'm tired. I don't like sitting in my bed and like tossing and turning because I can't sleep. I want to be physically exhausted and mentally tired so I can just fall right asleep.
Speaking of sleep, do you take rest days or do you do active rest?
I active rest, and that's usually like my yogas or my. Sometimes I'll just take a complete mental day where it's like, cool, I'm gonna meditate for an hour. I'm gonna go to a float tank. I'm gonna read, and that'll be the day. But I try to read something that's gonna help me move forward, not just like, oh, I'm gonna read comic books. No, like I'm gonna read something about like, again, meditation or breathing techniques or something that's gonna help me move forward.
You know, it's funny, all the people that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people, you know, from like the fire department and all. And I know a lot of CrossFitters. I know a lot of people from all kinds of different physical disciplines. And I tell them no days off, hashtag no days off, right?
Right.
And the first thing they do, oh, you're going to stop that. That's going to end soon. You're just going to jack yourself up. And then I have to say it's active rest. So like,
Totally.
I don't take a day, like if I'm not going to be lifting weights for a full day, I'm still going to go out and hike, or I'm still going to stretch, take time stretching. You know, there really is no reason to, barring extreme illness or injury, to just do nothing with your body all day. Yeah. And I even like that you put in meditation and reading as well in there too.
Yeah. And again, like you said, I didn't even think about it, but totally. I've started taking up hiking, and I think personally, I hate hiking. Which is why I'm worried about hunting, because I know we're literally walking around aimlessly for a while. But, you know, the hiking, it's like, all right, well, like that is a rest day for me. I'm going to go on like a 5-mile hike. Cool. Like I would have never done that. And that's more than I would have done had I done nothing. And sometimes I'll do something like work with like nunchucks or bow staff. And it's fun. It's enjoyable, but at least it's getting me moving. It's getting my heart rate up. So I'm doing something for the day.
So this is what you've been doing for a little over a year, correct?
Correct.
What kind of gains have you seen in your body? Like what kind of loss or gains?
I make this joke that I've lost 60 pounds, but it's been the same 15 over and over, like 15 gained, 15 lost. Yeah. But I definitely I've gone down a couple pant sizes. My weight has fluctuated and stayed roughly the same. It's gone probably from like 315 down to like 280 and jumped up a little bit and come back down. But I've also gained lean muscle mass, you know, doing body measurements. And I mean, I'm physically stronger than I've ever been in my life. I never thought I'd be able to just rip 70 pounds off the ground with a single hand and throw it over my head. I mean, not that I didn't think I could do it. I know for a fact I couldn't do it before. So it's been really interesting to see that happen.
Have you ever heard or seen Henry Rollins' essay on weightlifting?
I'm very familiar with Henry Rollins. I haven't seen the essay.
Okay, I'm going to link it. I'm going to link to a video of either him reading it or somebody reading it on YouTube. Cool. But it is so super inspirational. And basically he takes you through the story of when he was in high school and why and when he started lifting weights. And basically he had a teacher who got him into lifting weights and said, you know, you're going to make something out of yourself. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go buy a weight set and you're going to start lifting. And he showed him like the 5 different compound movements. And he said, you're going to do this every day. And here's the rules. You don't look in a mirror and you don't weigh yourself for 3 months. I think it was 3 months. And so Rollins went and did that, and you know he kept to the rules. Didn't look at himself, didn't weigh himself, and then you know after 3 months he actually did, and he was like, "Man, who is this man in the mirror?" And I think we get a little too, and I think that teacher had it right on. We get a little too obsessed with what the workout is doing for our body, as far as numbers on a scale or the visual look at us. You can't see the internal gains that you're getting. Both like in what you were talking about, and your ability to stave off fatigue, and also not only stave off fatigue, but you're talking about working until you are worn out. So you're actually probably getting better sleep and stuff too. So you're getting internally healthier, and building muscle. And so a lot of people, they go purely by, I'm going to start a workout plan, you know, on January 1st, I'm going to start a workout plan, and I'm going to look at myself in the mirror every day, and I'm going to look at the scale. Well, that's the quickest way to get yourself to quit.
Totally. Yeah, so, I completely agree. It's, I think the best compliment that I've gotten, through all of this was from the woman that I mentioned the first time at the beginning. And she's like, "You seem really happy." And I was like, "Yeah, I am. Like, I'm really happy. Like, I'm mentally in a far better place than I was before. I would, and just good and bad, as as Zach was mentioning with the negative self-talk, like it comes and goes. It's not a static thing, or it's not a constant thing, I should say. The last time I thought, I was like, man, like you're a real piece of shit today, like you didn't do something. I don't know when the last time it was, and there's times again when it pops up, but it comes and goes. But I'm in a far better place and that's one of the internal changes that I wasn't expecting.
But there's a world of difference between telling yourself you're a piece of shit because you didn't go and work out, and telling people in a self-deprecating manner that you're fat.
Totally.
So I would lean towards the first one that I just said. It's okay to have a little bit of guilt for not going in.
Well, that's the thing. Busy. Like, I think some people think like, no, negative talk, everything's bad. But if I know like I could have done better, I need to tell myself like, oh, you could have done better. Like you quit early, you didn't give it what you could have given. Like that's a lot different than thinking you're a shitty person or a shitty human being, or believing you're not worthy of who you are. If you're cutting corners, you need to have that conversation with yourself too, and be like, hey, you're cutting corners, knock that shit off. Like there is a big difference between those two.
Well, yeah, there's a huge difference between feeling normal human emotions that are guilt and shame compared to inflicting mental anguish on yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a great way to put it.
Jose, I want to thank you so much for coming and opening up and being vulnerable to us. And I got to tell you, I'm inspired by you. I'm a fan of yours. I'm going to keep watching you. And I really like what you had to say. There was something about watching your Instagram that I knew that you would come on this podcast and say the stuff that we want, the reason we created this podcast. I could just tell it from, just what you were doing. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We want you on the podcast again.
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd love to be back. Thank you for the opportunity. As I mentioned, I'm humbled, especially compared to your other guests. I'm just a normal, regular person. Nothing special about me. So anything that I can do, literally anyone else can do. So I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story.
Well, we have this thing on the Animal Mind podcast where we don't allow our guests to compare themselves to the other guests. What we want you to compare yourself to is the guy that sits on the couch and doesn't get off the couch. The guy that wakes up every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, grabs a package of Pop-Tarts, gets on his 15-minute ride to work, works, comes home, watches TV, wash, rinse, repeat, and never makes something better themselves. You're obviously trying to hit health from every angle. And I think it's really neat, from a mental angle, from a physical angle, we could say from a spiritual angle, because you're doing a lot of meditation and some of the breathing methods that you're using. And so I think that's really cool.
Thank you. It's much appreciated.
That last part about what you said, Pat, just really hurt because I love Pop-Tarts.
So I think this is an appropriate thing I could end the podcast with. Not related to physical fitness, not related to Jose, but it is related to work. I think, so we'll end it on a light note. So this week, out there running the recruits PT, I had them doing combat PT, and I started noticing they were coming around. So I had different stations for them. One station was field crawls. Another station was what we have called a Kaiser sled. It's something you hit with a sledgehammer. It's a weight that you hit with a sledgehammer. Another station was going up and down stairs, and another station was battle ropes with hoses. So they were doing, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes at each. Oh, and then did I say field crawls? I think I did. Field crawls. So I was at the field crawl station. Basically what a field crawl is you get down on your belly in your full turnout gear and you crawl on your belly, not on your hands and knees. Anyway, so the recruits come to me and I say, here's what you're doing. You're going to field crawl on your belly to the fence. When you tag the fence, you're going to get on your hands and knees and you're going to crawl back. You're going to come back to the concrete and you're going to do it again. Drop back to your belly and go to the fence. Here's the issue. There's 2 steps involved in that. Do you know how many questions I had to field from these recruits? Well, sir, what do we do when I hit the fence? You get up on your hands and knees and you crawl back. Well, then what do we do when we're done? Did you hear me? See, and so So when the whole thing is done, and see what we try to program in fire recruits is, attention to detail, being intentional, because you're out there saving people's lives. You're out there, having to have good situational awareness and all this kind of stuff. So I get them back in formation and I say, here's something I need you guys to know. In this academy, we expect you to go to your skill stations and be intentional learners. So when I give you a couple steps to achieve, I expect you to be listening to those steps. Now, when we were doing field crawls, I gave you 2 steps. You get down, field crawl to the fence, you touch the fence, you get on your hands and knees. And there were way too many questions. So that brings up probably one of the most awkward and strange conversations ever had, or motivational speeches ever given in a fire academy setting. In fact, I looked at the lead instructor and she looks at, he's finally lost his mind. He's finally lost his mind. So I look out across and I said, it's like if I was giving you directions on how to make a Pop-Tart. All right, 2 steps. You take it out of the package, you put it in the toaster. That's it. So if you come to my station and I say, today class, we're making Pop-Tarts, 2 steps. You take it out of the package, you put it in the toaster, all right? So you can ask, what kind of Pop-Tart is this? I didn't give you that information. That's fine, right? You can ask, how many calories does that Pop-Tart have? That's all information that we could dig a little deeper on. But damn it, if I say, take the out of the package and put it in the toaster, you better not ask me, what do I do when I take it out of the package? Or you better not say, what do I do before I put it in the toaster? Can I put it in there inside the package? Ugh. The youth of today, my friends, the youth of today.
It's hilarious.
Well, Jose, thank you once again for being on the show, and we're going to have you back. I'm going to get Zach to get you back on the show.
Absolutely.
In another couple of months, because we're going to pick your brain once again. It's been a blast. I'm so happy that we had you. I'm so happy that we reached out, and I'm so happy that you said, I want to do it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you both.